Hello and welcome to the Dreaming and Doing podcast with me, Nicky Raby. I'm an actor, coach, writer, speaker, podcaster and a mum. And in my coaching work, I work with creatives, personal brands, freelancers and small businesses. In my podcast, I talk about success, but not in a traditional sense. I have conversations with those who have built a business from something they love or who have made a pivot in their career. Also those who have built a brand or a job that maybe didn't exist when they were at school and they found a way to monetize their skills, talents and expertise. I've spoken to loads of incredible people, coaches, designers, journalists, app creators, magazine editors, bloggers, content creators, authors, and all-round movers and shakers. I ask the questions that you want to know the answer to. So how they started, about money, saying no, saying yes, pitching, presenting, putting yourself out there, even though it terrifies you, standing out in a busy online world, growing, scaling and making your work for you and your circumstances. The show notes are always at nickyraby.com/podcast and the conversation continues across social media, often on Instagram, my favourite platform, at Nicky Raby. Thanks so much for listening. It's great to have you with us. In today's episode, I'm talking to Kristi Edwards, who is the founder of Hesper Fox, which is a sleep and resort wear brand. Oh, and they look dreamy, and they've been worn by the lovely, I'm saying like I know her, Jessica Alba. I met Kristi at a Women in Business event and I was so compelled to talk to her because she just shared so much insight, not only about the highs that she's had during her business, but also the tricky times. And it's a really interesting conversation. And I hope that you'll come and join us over on Instagram at Nicky Raby. Kristi's Instagram is very amusing. I'm sure you will enjoy it. But there's lots of step-by-step chat in this, and I really do want to do this much more going into the future, of really giving you that step-by-step guide so you're not feeling alone, you're not feeling overwhelmed and confused and all those tricky emotions, but you're actually moving closer to what it is that you want to have. I'm starting to book into January now. Can you believe it? I can't believe Christmas is almost here. Well, it's not really, but all that kind of good stuff. So if you do want one-on-one stuff, please go over to my brand new website, which is looking all kinds of fly. Can I say fly? Maybe I'm too old for that. Or you can come and see me in person at Stylist Live on the 9th of November, or join one of my online events. I've got 4 coming up in November, and I'd love to see you there and help you one-on-one, and they just, by the way, are a bit of a lower cost option. So if you are just dipping your toe in at this stage, that might be for you. All right, I will leave you with Kristi and myself. Here's the episode. Kristi, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. Tell me about yourself and what you do, please.
Oh, thank you for having me, Nikki. On a sleep and resort wear brand called Hesper Fox, which I started at the beginning of 2016. So the business is still, it feels like it's a grandparent, but it is very much in its infancy. So I started in 2016. It's been, as I say on X Factor, it's been a journey. The highs are high and the lows are pretty low. But it really has been one of the best learning experiences, and I've learned more about myself and the world than I could have ever hoped to before I kind of launched onto this.
And you've had a baby in this time as well, which is like another major life moment.
And I had a baby. So I had a baby last year in August, and as I was having that baby, like physically having that baby, pushing it out in hospital, we had a really large order come in from a US department store. And because it's kind of my business and I didn't really have any help, I sort of went back to work when he was 5 days old. So, you know, when you and I were talking offline before, and you talk about things that you might do differently. Any that might be one of them. I might give myself a few weeks off. But anyone who's had a baby will tell you that your brain is just in a weird place, and you don't want to think about anything, let alone a spreadsheet and managing a manufacturing process. It was tough, but again, it's one of those things that you look back on and you think, oh my God, I actually did that with a kid in tow. It was
I'm amazing. Yeah,
well,
but it does.
Oh my God, I lived. I survived.
Yeah, exactly. And it does give you, I guess you might call on those moments later on, and in hindsight, it's a wonderful thing. I mean, the amount of terrible stories I've been able to romanticize and think, if I was a musical person, I'd be like, I'd just write a song about it. That would be the difficult second album. But it is that. It's kind of good in terms of having that in the bank, because then you're like, oh, if you need to call on it another day. But did you always want to be an entrepreneur? How did this moment start for you?
Did I? Yes, I did. I think because I was quite bad at working for other people. I think I didn't. I really wanted to do my own thing, and I think I started life, you and I met at an event, and I think, we spoke. I started life as a lawyer initially, and then sort of did that for a few years, and then went into sort of headhunting and recruitment, and then ran a good business in the city with a business partner. But I was, it was funny, my husband sort of took me aside one weekend and drew to my attention that I had lost a bunch of weight, changed the way I dressed, and as he described it, had become smaller. And I think that's what happens when you're doing something that you really don't want to be doing. And I will sort of always thank him for, I guess, sort of waking me up a bit, because if you've ever been through a time in your life when you're unhappy and feeling unfulfilled, it, but sometimes, I don't know, your sense of responsibility or doing the right thing prevents you from, I guess, treading onto a different path. And I was very much kind of in that spot. So for me to go and do something creative was something that I'd wanted to do my entire life, but it just never allowed myself to think that I could do. Yeah. But you can. It just takes a bit of I think it's one of those things you just have to take a breath and kind of jump. And any time in my life I've ever made big decisions, they may not have always worked out like I'd wanted them to, in your rosy kind of, wouldn't this be perfect? But they've never been, they've never been the thing of my nightmares either. So I think anyone who's thinking about doing something, if you have a bit of support, and that's the thing, I think, it's all well and good to say, just jump, just do it. But you do have to have some support around you, I think, before you have a massive life change.
Yeah, totally. Did it surprise you that your husband articulated it in that way? Because I feel like Matt does that sometimes. Sometimes he'll throw something completely out of the blue. I'm like, oh, whoa, I wasn't expecting that. But it's exactly the thing that I need to hear.
Yeah, and I think sometimes it takes someone really close to you, because I think we're all pretty good at putting on a smiley happy face. It's probably one of my worst defenses. Anyone that sort of knows me casually would just think I'm always happy and upbeat and satisfied with life and feeling great. And for none of us that's the case. But I think it takes someone really close to you to say, hey, did you realize that he just said to me, I'm now paraphrasing, but he sort of said, that girl that I fell in love with that was like, big and happy and didn't wear so much black. It's like, he said, I've watched her. I know physically I'd shrunk. I've got really, really curly hair, and I'd just taken to wearing it scraped back off my face. I was wearing a lot of black, and it's weird how you don't even know you're doing it. You don't know you're morphing into this sort of quieter, more mousy version of yourself, but I definitely was, and it took him close to me to point it out.
Wowza. And also that you can always mask all of that with busyness or the next thing or the next meeting, that actually when we're in that state of survival, of not, enjoying life particularly, we can find other vices to stick on the top of it and just kind of keep going. So I guess, how quickly did the idea start to come to materialize to start this brand?
Well, that was, I remember he had that conversation with me in the October, and he'd sort of, the business I was in was, and here's the other thing, it was kind of annoying. It was really profitable, and I felt, yeah, exactly. Like, here, do something that you hate.
Yes.
But it'll earn you a lot of money. And so hence I felt a lot of guilt with sort of leaving it behind as well. I just thought, why am I just being silly? Like, you have to, anyway, I felt a lot of guilt about sort of potentially leaving it behind. But he'd sort of said, look, I think regardless of what you decide to do, you need to extract yourself from this business. I had a business partner who was many things, but he wasn't someone that I should have ever, I think, been in business with. We'd worked together before, but the dynamic wasn't working. So we had this conversation in October where he said, look, it doesn't matter what you do, but I think you've got to be away from your current environment. And then on Christmas Day, he gave me a really beautiful pair of silk pajamas in a box, and I opened them, literally like had this sort of lightning bolt epiphany, opened them on Christmas morning and said, I'm going to do that. And he looked at me and said, okay. Okay, are you going to make the box? And I said, no, I'm going to do the pajamas. And, to his credit, he said to me, you should totally do it. Like, without even blinking, like, why don't you do that? So then
And had you ever, is sleepwear your thing? Had you ever thought about that previously?
Nicky, if you had seen my previous sleepwear wardrobe, you would not say, was sleepwear your thing? No, it absolutely was not. But I think it was one of those things I'd always thought, in your kind of ideal life, you don't get around in a pair of sloppy track pants and, a stained T-shirt. I think when you're trying to project the woman that you want to be, you care for yourself at home as well as when you're outside.
Yes.
And I think maybe that was one of the elements that made me think sleepwear was a good idea, because I'd neglected half of myself for a long time. I'm not saying physically, and I wasn't getting around looking like a tramp or anything, but I just think I thought that it was, and when you, there's been a lot of entries into the sleepwear market recently, but when you looked at it back then, like this was 2014 before I started the business, the Christmas of 2014, there wasn't a lot around that was very inspiring. I mean, there was M&S, printed T-shirts with ducks on the front and matching trousers. And I don't know about you, but that's certainly not my style. And I just thought it was an area where a bit of interest could have been injected.
Exactly. All those awful things that they went through such a phase in the 90s when we were about teenagers, and we had these really inappropriate sleepwear things with slogans on, like, yeah, come and get it. And I'm sure my dad was like, why is my 13-year-old wearing that? That's awful.
Or something with like nasty gal on the front, nothing that was okay.
No, exactly. And, I didn't even know what I was presenting to come and get it at 13. I was just a mess of hormones. I was like, don't touch me, Arma, touch me, I'm crying, I don't know.
But I also think, sleepwear was it was sort of infantilized. So there was, the duckies and the bunnies and the cutesy pink stuff, or it was like this highly sexualized lace and baby doll dresses. And there wasn't very much in between that was just beautiful and stylish that women actually want to wear. Yeah. Because I don't know many people who want the duckies, and equally, I don't know many people who want the sort of hooker vibe either.
Yeah, I want a full English but wearing a baby doll. Like, it's just never going to work.
not going to work. And maybe it's just the crew that I mix with, but none of my friends want either of those things.
No.
So I felt that there was a kind of like a third wardrobe, if you like, that could be exploited, because we all spend now so much more time. Well, not all of us, but a lot of us spend time working at home. And I think being in a sloppy pair of PJs at home, it's not great for your work morale or your self-esteem. So to put on something that, is still home appropriate and comfortable but stylish was kind of where I was aiming things.
Yeah. So how then did it start? So you've got this idea. Did you know about did you know any of the things?
Nikki, I knew none of the things. No, when I say I knew none of the things, I really knew none of the things. And when I told my mum, who is also massively supportive, I told her, and she did have a quiet snigger, because she was like, oh, this involves sewing. Not her sewing, but someone sewing, and she will not get this. So that was probably the biggest uphill, steep learning curve I've ever encountered. I mean, to say I knew nothing, I'm not exaggerating. I'd never had any family experience. No one in my immediate circle had ever been a designer or a manufacturer or, none of that. So I really started quite cold, and it's things like that I look back on and I think, wow, I have actually managed to teach myself a hell of a lot. And it's that I'm almost more proud of than the brand, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, definitely. Because all of that takes, so many people wouldn't have even got to that stage that they would have said like, oh, I can't do any of these things, so it's never going to move forward. It's like the infamous like, oh, I'd love to write a book, but actually all you have to do is write the book. But most people don't get to that first stage.
But I also think women really suffer from that really badly. Like, I think there's a lot of blokes I know who started things, and they're less scared by the fact that they don't know anything. They don't see that as an insurmountable obstacle like some women do. Like, actually, deep in my heart, I was like, I can't do this. I don't know how to do this. I can't do it. But the fact is, it's just, I'm going to get it to sound sickening, but my husband said to me, who's a very analytical thinker and a guy that can compartmentalize things. And he said, you just have to break it down into small pieces. When you look at the whole, you're never going to think you can do it. But if you break it down into bit by bit by bit, then you can, because they're all just small threads that knit together. And he is absolutely right. And I think now, like, for example, I'm now looking at what the hell's going to happen when we Brexit with, European VAT. And I started to do some reading, and the fear was calling. I was sitting there thinking, I cannot understand any of this. But when I took a breath and went back through it and started it again, with a new attitude, it is different. You can teach yourself things.
And I've really learned throughout this that it is that sense of getting to know yourself, and there's no point me trying to do those big old scary things when I'm tired or I'm feeling anxious or I'm just not in the right headspace. So I've kind of learned my own rhythms, and it's not a case of like, oh, she's so lazy, she just needs to get on with it. It's like, no, for the purposes of me feeling kind of in the best possible way, I need to do certain things on certain days.
Yeah, and you need to, you need to go through your little rituals. If I'm, for example, reading about European VAT, I mean, to say I'm not that way inclined is an understatement. But I put yourself in a quiet room, make a cup of tea. Go. At least make yourself comfortable enough to feel that you can absorb the information.
Yes.
Don't try and do it when you're doing 17 other things. Like, it's that whole And it is that whole focus thing. It's do one thing at a time.
And I've really understood the power of that in terms of we were taught to be these multitaskers who's making a roast dinner whilst doing something else and it's like, no, like the brain is on fire. I mean, I guess what were the first things that you did in terms of really starting to bring it all to life?
Yeah. What were the first things I did? So I started to research about what sort of product I want to make, and I landed on silk, which anyone who's ever manufactured will say, well, you were pretty stupid, weren't you? Because not only is it hideously expensive, it's very, very difficult to make. So whereas if you were just making sort of T-shirts and shorts, there's lots and lots of places you could go to do that. But I went on a bit of a genuine geographical journey, like from China to Lithuania to Turkey to Portugal, to try and find someone to make it. But the first thing I had to do was sort of get a bunch of samples made, which was really hard because I went to this poor woman in Brixton who I will never forget. I just turned up there with a bunch of drawings, and I also know nothing about technical drawings either. And I said, can you make these? And she just sort of looked at me and went, yeah. Yeah. So that was the first set of samples, which were just literally made from some sketches that I took to her. And then, of course, those samples went through, 17 million combinations and permutations. And then I ended up meeting this girl who consulted for me for a couple of months. And together we found a factory, and, that's how we got started. I found a fabric supplier. I spoke to a print designer. So all of these, again, those steps in the beginning, you think, how am I going to do this? When you break them down into small pieces of a much larger process, it is a lot easier to comprehend.
Absolutely, because like Oprah says, you can't eat an elephant all at once, which I don't know if is an ethical analogy, but it is, because it can so easily consume you and take you under and make you stressed and make you feel like you don't have any of the things that you need, even if you have quite a few of them already. How did you know how you were going to stand out, and how did you create that USP for yourself?
Well, again, like when I entered the market, there was the duckies and the hookers, as we're now referring to them clearly. Just so you know, I've never referred to them as the duckies and the hookers before.
Hook a duck.
Hook a duck, hook a duck, hook a duck. As I say, there wasn't very much in between that was kind of clean and tailored yet feminine, with interesting prints and what I sort of used to call unsleepy colorways. PJs all were sort of, blue and pink and lemon or beige and, or just plain black. And so I decided that I wanted to, I guess, create prints that were probably less readily associated with sleepwear. So I didn't want to do anything floral because that was already being done and it wasn't really my style. So if you look at our website, you'll see pretty much every season we do a stripe, like how revolutionary. And we also do like a couple of other complementary prints, but they're sort of quite bold. And they're probably a bit more, a lot of people buy our pajama shirts, for example, and wear them with jeans, or they buy the trousers and wear them with a sweater. So they're a bit more kind of crossover, and that was what I was aiming for when I started it. It kind of helped that there was that whole pajama dressing trend that has been lingering now for a few years, but that has helped, I think, someone justify spending, 300 plus quid for a pair of silk pajamas is a lot of money to spend on something that only you or your husband or your kids or your flatmates are going to see. So I wanted it's that sort of third wardrobe phrase. I wanted it to have a little bit more versatility. So if you buy a PJ shirt that's from a 330 quid set, I would like to think that you could wear it as a shirt with jeans out at night, which is what I do, and I think what a lot of our customers do as well.
Amazing. And if I was spending that, it would never be off my back. People would be like, are you wearing this? Yes, I am. Yes, I am wearing the same thing again.
Yeah.
How have you how have you found your customers, for those people who have that budget, and what things have worked really well in terms of marketing? Because I know so many of my clients, they want to be all things to all people, but actually getting to know your market and what they need is probably the best thing that you can do, so you can find them.
Yeah, you really can't be all things to all people. I think it's really tempting when you're a young brand, because all you want to do is get the brand out there, and frankly, you need to make some money. So yes. It is tempting to try and spread yourself a bit thinly, but I found for me it's been better to just stick to what I think the brand is and who I think the woman that would like the brand is. And I think that woman is, I'm probably going to make myself a bit sick in my mouth here, but like she's classic with a bit of a twist. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah. So she's probably that woman, but really bizarrely, and it could be because I think silk pajamas are a pretty classic gift. 60 to 65% of my customers are men.
Oh.
Yeah.
But not buying for themselves, buying for other people.
Well, maybe buying for themselves, but
nice.
I suspect not, because we do only sell ladies' PJs. But if men want to buy our PJs and wear them, I'm all for that as well.
Absolutely.
But yeah, a lot of male customers buying for wives, girlfriends, mums, I guess. Obviously big times of year for us are Valentine's Day, Mother's Day and Christmas. But even outside of those kind of key gifting times, I find that a lot of and especially our repeat customers are men.
Wowzers. And maybe they're buying pajamas for all kinds of people. In every single port. So how have you, what's worked for you in terms of, has it been PR or press or, getting your how have you got your name out there basically? Because it can be so competitive to stand out.
It's very, very, very hard. And it's so funny that you asked that question, because I was having a conversation with a guy yesterday only, who talked about how a brand needs to find their tribe. And I think obviously social media has been really good for that. We don't have a massive Instagram following, but what we do have is really engaged and loyal. And I think with social, what I really tried to do was to give the brand a voice. I think the products kind of speak for themselves. So our feed is a mix of, I guess, the product themselves, and shots of, we've had Jessica Alba wearing our PJs, which was great. It was a massive spike in engagement on our website and in sales and what have you. And that sort of thing does work. But I think what probably has worked better for us is trying to create that community. So tapping into the minds of what your tribe or your audience find funny, or maybe what they'll find uplifting, or maybe just something they want to see or read on that particular day. So trying to understand, a friend of mine always says, who is the woman? Who is she? So trying to understand, what's going to tickle her funny bone, or what's going to make her feel good on that particular day. So for us, social media has been really, really good from that. And indeed, most of the traffic to our website comes directly from there. But also from, we've developed really good relationships with our stockists, and they tend to champion the brand as well. So I think that dual kind of, direct customer thing with people coming to the website and also seeing it in stores has been good too.
Amazing. I was going to say, how do you concentrate on the day-to-day stuff of like, this all needs to happen today, but also giving yourself that time and space to grow the brand and expand, and also have those windows of opportunities to reflect and see like what's going on, what needs to happen next?
Well, that's, again, are you reading my mind at the moment?
I am, exactly. Yeah, I can see through the powers of Skype, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, you're reading my mind, because that, I think, is the single biggest challenge for any person who is running a small business, and in particular one that has a creative, I guess, a creative backbone, because you will know yourself, trying to manage an order book, send out invoices, pay invoices, give instructions to your accountant, do your VAT return. They're very, very, very different skills and require the engagement of a different side of your brain to creating a new collection. And as you say, having the time and space to do that. So that is possibly my biggest challenge, is that I am currently, I have really good freelance help I have an amazing production manager and someone that helps me on that side of things. And I have had people working for me and interns here and there. But the difficulty is, as a small business, you don't have a whole lot of cash. So you end up doing a lot of stuff yourself. And I'm not quite sure how I juggle it or manage it. I just know that I have to.
Yes.
Some days I just decide I am really only going to check my emails in the morning and the afternoon. In particular, if I'm trying to get a new collection together, or, heaven forbid, trying to be creative, I need to block out those essential but external things. I just have to have time, often in silence, just sitting there with a bit of space to think. But those, I have to say, really honestly, those times are very few and far between. It's quite hard.
Yeah, and I think sometimes it can be so glad, people must be like, wow, you just created a brand and you must just wear like nice things all the time, and you do, but it's like, but also nobody gets to skip all the nitty gritty and the day-to-day stuff. It still needs to, even if somebody else is doing it for you, you still need to drive it and tell people, or you can still come back and go, oh brilliant, everybody's left their pants on the floor, how excellent. But what keeps you good, what keeps you buoyant and resilient and kind of in the zone when you need to?
One of the things I absolutely love about what I've decided to do is the people I've met since and don't get me wrong, my old friends from my kind of, I don't call it my old life, but my old friends from my old life I still love. But I have met people doing what I'm doing now who I consider to be a really amazing resource, and they're probably 95% women. Mm-hmm. I mean, what keeps me buoyant is I know that I can pick up the phone most hours of the day and call someone. Am I allowed to swear on this?
You can. We're all friends here.
Yeah. I can call someone and say, holy fuck, this just happened. And they'll say, oh yeah, that happened to me last week. So these are all people who are doing a similar kind of thing to what I'm doing, running their own brands, people who've launched their own businesses, a lot of people in sort of fashion and textiles and that kind of area. And that little tribe, that community is really, really amazing. And there are a couple of friends who, we all know how tough this is, but there are a couple of, I have been close to a couple of times saying, do you know what, I just can't do this. It's too hard. I just can't do it. And those women that have said, Kristi, stop.
We've heard this before.
Yeah, you just stop. And I am, like a lot of us are, I am possibly my most harsh critic.
Yeah.
I will beat myself black and blue. And it took a friend of mine to say to me last week, excuse me, can we just pause for a second? And let's have a look at what you've done by yourself after having had a kid.
Yeah.
Let's just look at it. Just take a breather. And that's the kind of thing, really, honestly, that keeps me going. I would really love to say to you, I have this incredible internal strength, but I don't. I draw a lot from just terribly supportive people around me.
And I think that's no bad thing, because we all having that understanding, because I think also when you're tired and you're overwhelmed and you're trying to do all the things, you then seem to attract these irritating people who go, how, with double thumbs up, how's business? And you're like, why are you here in my space, in my life? Because that's not helpful. Or like, it looks really exciting and it's not substance. It's not bringing anything to the table. So I think we all need these pageant mums who are going to be like, you're amazing, get to the front, go.
Yeah. No, I completely, and the pageant mum is such a great way of describing it. But you do need, look, we all need a champion, or champions. And, occasionally it's okay. One of the champions last week just called me to have a little chat, and within like 3 seconds I was crying my heart out on the phone. And she was like, look, it's okay. Like, just, this is all normal. But you can feel, because it's also, I think running a business by yourself is quite lonely.
Yeah.
You don't have that sounding board. Like, people I know that do this with business partners, whilst I absolutely don't want one ever again, been there, done that, I think people that run, especially a creative business with a business partner, there's someone to bounce things off. When you do it by yourself, it can be very, you can start to talk to yourself a bit, which I don't know if that's so healthy.
I am so clever when I talk to myself.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. But then occasionally when you talk to yourself, the nasty person comes out and you get really, really self-critical. And I don't think that's healthy. So sometimes you need that balance, that other person to say, oh, hang on, I think we've gone too far here. When you work by yourself, you don't have that.
And things can get on top of you. This is like therapy. It's so good. Things can really get on top of you very quickly. And that spiral from like, even just a crappy email that somebody sends you, by the end of it, you're like, oh my goodness. And I did a podcast about it actually. Like, just because you have a bad month doesn't mean that you need to change your whole business model, because there can be that sort of toddler reaction sometimes of going, right, that's it. I can't do it. Yeah, I'm terrible. Yeah.
And I think too, I think starting a business when you're a little bit older, it's a bit like having kids when you're a bit older. I think you know yourself that bit better. And I know that I absolutely do catastrophize, and I have to be really, really careful of that, because I will think the world is burning just because, as you say, someone sent me one shitty email.
Yes. And I think maybe we all need to channel Jessica Alba in your pajamas.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, because also I'm looking at her and I don't want to call any women out here, but she's got 3 kids and she's got a multi-million-pound dollar company, but like, nobody talks about all the help behind the scenes that people are getting. Again, Victoria Beckham, hugely successful, but also she has a team and probably a lot of budget to play around with when, to call food in or to do those things, or go, I'm just going to get a taxi rather than the tube and 2 buses. That maybe those financial considerations that most small businesses have.
Yeah. I mean, you do think about, I think as a small business that's self-funded, you think about every penny that you spend, because you have to. And I think if you don't, you're almost being irresponsible. And even if you do have a huge budget, I still think you need to be mindful, and it's really easy to forget what you're spending.
Yes.
Because all of a sudden it's like, oh, it's only 1,500 quid, or, it's only 500 quid. Well, it takes a long time to earn that kind of money. Do you know what I mean?
Definitely. And I also feel that when I don't have as much cash, it makes me think in a different way, in a more creative way. And sometimes I do, I mean, sometimes there's a lot of crying in that as well, but I kind of go around the idea and come up with a different kind of solution, which I would maybe have not have got to unless I just kind of threw money at it.
And I think, my husband's always using that phrase, let's just throw some cash at it. It's like, no, we're not going to just throw some cash at it. We're going to think about this. Because it's, I do think, look, I think that's the time and money are the two things, aren't they? And I think they're amplified, the lack of both is amplified in a small business.
Yeah. Definitely. And they're kind of coming at you in multicolours, like strobes in a horrible club, like, wow, this feels so crazy. I've got one final question, which is, where would you like to be in 5 years' time, in business, in life, in a combination of the two?
God, that's really difficult, isn't it? So in life, I would probably I'd love to have had another baby and kept it alive.
Great.
Yep. Business-wise, I would like to have grown Hesper Fox to beyond where it is now. I would like to scale it a bit more. I would like to, introduce more offerings to my tribe of customers, as it were. And in life in general, I think I'd like to feel that I'd like to have more evidence of looking back thinking, okay, you're still scared, but you can do that. You're still scared, but you've done it before, you can do that. So maybe that bit more, just that bit less fear, that bit more trust in myself. And of course, goes without saying to still be, 70% happy in what I'm doing, a good mum to my one child, hopefully my two children, a good wife to my husband, and a good friend. Like, I have tried very, very hard, despite feeling just horrifically overwhelmed and busy, to still remain present for people. And I think I would like, or would hope that would still be the case in 5 years.
Oh, and also, who knows who you will have met or what will have changed and expanded. And when I talk about it, 5 years sometimes seems like a short amount of time, but actually it is a short amount of time, but you can get so much can change.
Well, when I think about my life 5 years ago, it's pretty different to what it is now.
Yes. Yeah. Exciting. The future is bright. Is silk pajamas. If people want to come and find you, where should they go?
They can go to hesperfox.com, so it's HESPERFOX, or in London, we're stocked in Liberty and Fenwick. And if you're based in the US, we're about to be stocked in Neiman Marcus. And if you check our website, there's stockists through Europe and the US and the UK.
Oh my God, I didn't know you were going to be... That is amazing.
Yay!
But I want you to hear... Here comes the pageant mom. I want you to hear that. That is incredible. Goodness, what you've done in 2 years. Wowzers.
Oh, look, it's a thing. It's doing all the things, Nikki. It's doing all the things.
Doing all the things. But my goodness, I want you to take a moment today and realise that, because things can change super quick. And it's kind of like with this podcast. I mean, there might be somebody listening to it whilst buying pajamas in New York or somewhere equally glamorous. And here we are. I'm about to make some sort of dinner that my child may not eat.
No, but we'll both be doing that.
We'll both be doing that, yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I don't know about your child, but my child tends to throw his dinner at me, which
Well, my child can now articulate what he would like, and he kind of would like that immediately. So the latest is, not this, can we have meringues? And I did have to say this morning, well, it's 5 to 8, so I can't quite rustle up a meringue at this stage of the game. But thanks for asking, kiddo.
But Nikki, if you were a really good mum, you could have.
I know. Must try harder. I must get that pinny on and look like that woman in the book, in the John Lewis catalogue. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Oh, but thank you so much. You've been such a brilliant guest. I've loved chatting.
Thank you for talking. I've loved it too.
Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed it, and I would love to hear what you thought of the episode and share any takeaways with me. Come and find me across social media at Nicky Raby, or you can visit the podcast page, nickyraby.com/podcast.